My name is Thomas Henderson, and I am from Scotland in the UK. I live in a place called Blantyre, just outside Glasgow. Pre sort of testing for CMT UK, I was only diagnosed when I was 30. So up to the age of 30, I always knew there was something not quite right. I was limited in what I could do in terms of being out with friends. Um, felt some difficulties and some pain, and falling quite a lot when I was younger and things like that. So I always knew there was something not quite right. But at the point where I was going through testing, whether it would be the electromagnetic testing, blood tests, and clinical tests and things like that, I felt quite anxious as I wasn't sure what it could be that was wrong with me. Symptoms were mainly pain, nerve pain, fatigue in the muscles. So where muscles are working extra hard just to do the simple tasks of walking around. Um, falling was a symptom of it as well. Falling quite often, just tripping over nothing. So tiredness, real tiredness doing simple things. Well, I actually had surgery in both feet. So I had tendon lengthening surgery when I was 4 years old in my left foot, and then at 12 years old, I had the same procedure done to my right foot. Back then, still didn't know what it was, but we just knew there was something that wasn't right, because that was the idea being that the tendon lengthening would help stop the falling and the tripping over, would alleviate some of the tightness in my ligaments and tendons and things like that. But all along that whole time, right up to I was 30, we knew there was something wasn't quite right. Awareness is not great, so the doctor didn't know what it was. The doctor had to ask me to spell it out to them, what Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, how it was spelled, and then had to go and look at Google online to understand a bit more about it. Now, that obviously isn't any fault of the doctor or the NHS service or anything like that. That is more just around the lack of awareness that we all know as an issue with CMT. I guess as a kid, you're quite adaptable anyway, so adapted quite a bit. I didn't do certain activities because I either was too slow or I just couldn't do them. I had to use certain footwear and spend a lot of time testing footwear and make sure it was right. And also, I guess, just again, as a child, you can be quite resilient. So just kind of got on with things really. But like I say, I knew there was something wrong. All my friends knew there was something wrong. My parents knew there was something wrong. But you just, I guess, at times you just get on with it. So during the various stages of testing, there was forgive me if it's not the correct name. I'm sure it was electromagnetic testing, where the signals are sent through your nerves essentially, and you're sort of hooked up to a machine, and it's to see how quickly your nerves react to these little pulses, electrical pulses going through your body. Um, at each of those stages, the conversations were getting more sort of towards CMT, but the initial one was more, yeah, there's a neurological issue, definitely because of the speed at which your nerves are reacting on the electromagnetic testing. The clinical assessments, looking at the deformities and things, were, yeah, it looks like it could be Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. And then the final part of that was the blood testing and the genetic testing that absolutely sealed it and confirmed that it was CMT. So I guess it was a sort of gradual introduction as to this is probably what you have. And by the end of it, as I say, it was confirmations through the blood test that it was definitely CMT, and it was CMT type 1A. No, absolutely not. Had no idea what it was. Like a lot of people, when I first heard the name, you automatically think it's something to do with your teeth because of Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. So, but no, absolutely no prior awareness to what the disease was or anything about it. kind of as that flows through your system, I started thinking about being a bit more apprehensive as to, so what does this actually mean for the future? Is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? Is there a cure? You know, how do I manage it? Where do I go? Who do I speak to? So probably more questions in the end, actually, you know, after that initial first few days of after being diagnosed. Relief to actually understand a bit more about it, and what it was. At least I could go and then do my own research, as well as having the specialists and the neurological consultants tell me a bit about it, and what it was just easier to process, because I was able to match up a lot of the things over the last 30 years that I'd felt or experienced to, this is what it is. And you know, when I did some more research, whether it was reading books and papers or googling online, I was able to link up everything that I was feeling over that period of time, and tick off literally like a list as to the symptoms, the impacts of it, how I felt, you know, and the prognosis and things like that. So initially it was really positive. But since June, I have been fitted with a set of leg braces that I use on day-to-day walking activities, whether it's outside walking in the street or at shops, or you know, anything you do day to day, out with the family, that sort of thing. And because I've got those, people take much more notice because they're a physical thing you can see. So continuous staring since I've had them, people just stare because they just never seen anything like it before. Because they are quite, you know, visible on your legs. They go up the back of your legs, they're on the front of your legs, they're around your shoe, sort of thing. So people because they can physically see something, they, you know, they're very interested to understand what it is. I wasn't back in touch with my own GP at that point. The GP really arranged a referral. After that, it was more about sort of consultants, seeing them every 6 months, or talking to them for an initial consultation to understand sort of what support there is out there, what they can do, what they recommend. Um, so yeah, it wasn't much contact with the initial doctor after that, and there hasn't been since, actually. Very much aware, and friends, and particularly in the triathlon club that I'm in as well, hadn't heard of the disease before. Now they all know exactly what it is, and they support me through that, and they help me make adaptations, or you know, if I'm tired or I'm sore, you know, they're there to support. So very much so, now that they know what the disease is. I guess it would have been difficult before when they didn't know what it was or what I was complaining about or what the pain was. I guess it would have been different back then prior to diagnosis. It's varied. So in the main, as a continuous, I explain it to people. When people ask me, it's quite hard to explain what the pain is. I explain it almost like a dull toothache, but on your feet, and then sometimes on your hands. And it's just always there. It's just a continuous. It kind of gets, some days it can be a bit worse, and some days it can be a bit less. But it's, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's always sort of there in the background. So I think that's a thing mentally that you have to kind of work on and get over, and just accept that it's going to be there, and you know, almost do things that help you forget that it's there. So there's that part. Then there's the pain part. Then there's the physical part where, you know, still continuously trip over things, maybe not fall as much. You become an expert, sadly, at falling, and you don't tend to hurt much things when you fall, because you kind of work out how to land properly without damaging other bones in your body. Um, the main thing would be silly tasks that you know, you don't think are necessarily important, but buttoning a shirt, you know, buttoning my top button can take me ages to do, because you just don't have the fine motor skills. Or when the kids ask you to open a bottle for them, because you're supposed to be the strong dad that can open a bottle of juice or open a tin for them, and yeah, it can be quite difficult as well if it needs a lot of focus from your hands and your um your fingers and things like that. Some days, you know, the kids want to go walks, long walks, and you know, it could be difficult. I tend to push through it, but it's, you know, it's not always the most sort of um, rewarding thing to do, because you just think, I could do without this today. Also, the tremors in your hands can be quite difficult. Um, and probably the last thing is more around that hot and cold sensations, swelling and heat. A couple of hours later, you can be absolutely freezing. Your fingers and your toes are going blue for no particular reason. So I think those would be the key things really on a daily basis that you would experience. One of my ways of dealing with having this disease is just pushing myself forward. So I don't necessarily focus on what I can't do. I try and turn that around mentally to say, well, what can I do? So I spoke a bit about attempting an Ironman next week in Barcelona. I consider myself very lucky to be able to turn up to the starting line fit and healthy reasonably. Albeit there'll be limitations, and I've entered as a challenged athlete, so you'll get some help with chairs and people getting me out the water and stuff like that at the sea. But um, I think just having to always try and keep a kind of smile on your face and push through the pain at times that you experience is probably the most challenging part, albeit pain isn't necessarily physical to a degree. It's a feeling, you just get it and it's sore. I'd say that's the most challenging thing. Things like you say, buttoning a shirt or not opening bottles or doing particular little tasks, they're more annoyances than an actual real challenge. There are other ways to do those things. That I'd say the main challenge is the pain and the fatigue that you can get, and just keeping yourself going day in, day out, I guess would be the main thing for me. Just not enough people know about it and know all the impacts of it and how it impacts people's lives. And without that, there's not going to be the kind of funding behind that and the push to drive for cures and all the research that we see happening sporadically, but there's just not enough happening for that.